Hello and welcome to Time for Art. This is Allison Crary. I'm all alone tonight. Hershey Petty, our comments guy and beloved host, is a little under the weather, so it's just me tonight, which we'll try and have Hershey with us on Wednesday. So Time for Art, if this is your first time joining, is a live stream art community that goes live at least Mondays and Wednesdays, sometimes more. And if you'd like to subscribe, for $39.99 a month, you get all the materials to participate. And on Mondays, we journal and sketch and work in our sketchbooks. And on Wednesdays, we paint on a 8x10 canvas panel and do some really beautiful finished work. So today, I'm going to show the technique of this particular transfer. Every kit comes with vellum transfer, so you can move them around, see where you are on your page. And we're gonna do the tree. And in my art journal, I've done the tree a few times and I used it kind of as a transition. So in November is a transition month. And so I have the tree here that has all of its leaves, for the most part, shedding a few, but it's green and red. And on this one, I went ahead and made the composition both pages and I included the sun. On this page, I only used one of the pages and I did our copy transfers that we did last time on the same page too, but I have most of the tree. It's got a bunch of different colors going on and I went ahead and outlined some of the leaves and showed some of them falling. And all of this is from this vellum transfer right here. On this page, I show a lot of the outline of the tree. And I have the leaves kind of taking you off the page in this direction. And the background is painted in blues, and the leaves and trees on the tree are primarily orange and red, which is kind of contrasting, definitely complementary. So it's one of the techniques I used here, as well as here, and I didn't outline anything on this one. This is kind of a cold gray sky, like it was in Chicago today. And it's nighttime, and it just kind of shows sort of a cold kind of pseudo winter, but leaves are still falling off the trees day. So these are what we're going to do. We do work in our art journals always on Mondays. And so this is how today looks, and then we'll paint on our canvas panel on Wednesday. So I went ahead and prepped this page, and these two pages for this transfer. And this is just basic paint technique. Made this one purple, made this one kind of a lavender, and made this one kind of a lilac pink color. And I went ahead and transferred this image onto here. And in case you forgot how to do that, we went ahead and taped the transfer image to the page, and we're going to do that next. This one, so I'll demonstrate on this one. Hinged it on top. You can use the labels we can provide. You can use tape. Tonight I'm using tape, just like this. You're going to tuck, in this case, we include white transfer paper. This is a wax finish, sticky side down, in our kits. So you'll be getting this as well. And this is going to go right under your outline. And I'm going to use my Time for Art pencil. And in this case, I'm going to do this one more like how we did this guy in our sketchbooks. Not this one. This one. So you see the outline of the tree, but it's not everything. There's going to be a lot of leaves on it too. I'm going to tuck this in like this. And I'm just going to start outlining the perimeter of the template image. And so for this one, the really important parts, because we're going to be painting over it, are the outside of the tree, We want to know kind of how far it goes. So I'm catching these lines out here. And I'm not being too precise because it's a tree and it's an organic form and no two are ever the same. And I'm applying kind of mild pressure because this transfer paper is stronger than it looks. And we include white transfer paper, which is a type of wax. And we include graphite paper. And that's so that you can transfer onto any color, really at any time. And the white works best the darker you go. So I made sure I hit a really nice deep purple. And then we can paint kind of opaquely on top of that. So I'm making sure I get these kind of outer branches. And then I'm going to kind of go for the inside of the tree. So you just kind of see how it comes together. And when I'm picking these kind of outer branches, I'm kind of following one of the lines all the way out. Just like this. And then I just want to make sure everyone understands kind of how this tree comes together. And especially in these big branches, every time I do one, I want to make sure I do the other side of one. It doesn't make any sense to have kind of half a branch. So I'm going up in here. I'm going to come back down and around this way, over this way, back down and around this way, right around this way. Back this way. This way. Back around this way. And I don't need to hit all of them. Not every tree is the same. There's more than enough lines to choose from here. I'm just making sure that everything I catch has two sides. And we're gonna lift this up. We're gonna see what we got. And that's just with the white outline. So sometimes, and I did this in my book, I just left the white transfer because I think it looks so beautiful, kind of like a ghost image. I did that on the constellations, also included in your kits. But these constellations are just the wax from the transfer paper. I didn't paint over them. And I think it's a really cool technique. So on this one, we've got this really kind of fun white image on top of a dark background in contrast. And I think we're going to want to do this. I know most of the leaves are on the tree, so I want to keep that. And I think I'm going to make this kind of a red. Fall leaf. So I started with my opaque white. Covering white is what we include in our kits. And we've tried quite a few. This is by far my favorite. And I love using it on these. And then I think I'm going to make the branches kind of a blue. And then we'll make the leaves green. I'm using the medium-sized brush. I'm going to save the small brush for some kind of smaller branches, twigs and sprigs. And so I'm just going to mix up this lighter blue. This is obviously a more stylized approach to a tree, not any tree I've seen is quite this color. But it'll make for kind of an interesting image. And we're going to do the technique, the line technique that I think you can't practice enough, which is in art, you always pull a line. So a good example is I'm pulling it like this, and look at that clean edge I have. And your paint needs to be really, really wet. You need a lot of paint on your brush, not too much, but enough. And so I'm going to start with the trunk, a line like this. I'm not going to do any of the details just yet. I'll save that for my smaller brush. Up in here, these lines around here. And with this nice opaque white, you kind of get it in one pass. Another one of my favorite techniques is to work light on dark. And it kind of creates a glow. So when the dark peeks through a little bit, it has kind of a sparkle finish to it. There's kind of an iridescence to it. And so this is working for my big branches. I'm going to catch these guys this way. And the more you do it, the more you just kind of work with a line brush and pull these lines. It's just a really satisfying, soothing stroke to paint. It's certainly not the only one, but up in here. We're still going to put leaves on this, so this way. Let's see if I've caught the kind of big ones. That. And if you choose kind of your bigger brush for these strokes in the middle, there's kind of a consistency to your line weight. That is congruent with the sort of consistency of the width of the branches in the middle. Something you always want to remember when you're painting a tree or drawing a tree is that the branches get smaller as they go out. And so some kind of student work mistake sometimes is that a branch will get thicker as it goes out, not smaller. And it's always going to end at its smallest point. Okay, I like how this middle sort of looks. I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. And I'm going to paint some of my smaller lines. I'm going to hit these kind of root, sort of tip of the trunk areas, just like that. And I'm going to pull these twig lines right into the middle. And remember with trees, branches are going to overlap. So right now, I've got everything kind of staying in its own lane. Not how it works. So good to just kind of send some branches in a way we have it quite got them lined up, but keep it real. And I'm going to keep these ones on the outside because we always want our most narrow branches to be at the edge. I'm starting from the outside and applying the least amount of pressure and pulling them in with more pressure, making a little bit of a wider line as we get closer and closer to the inside of the tree. And remember with acrylic paint, always going to dye both darker and more translucent. And so we're going to go back in and we're going to see what parts of this require a second coat. And if we want to do some bark texture on the parts that show. Working on these top ones, getting some really fine lines. Make sure it's not getting in anyone's way. And when you subscribe to Time for Art subscriptions, and kits are on sale now for our first month in January at timeforartsubscriptions.com, you will get a sketchbook art journal, which is what this is, to work in every single month. You will get these vellum transfers so that you have a place to start. This month was Cycles of Transition. We chose that because we're in November and it's a transition month. We're also observing all these other transitions at the same time. Night and day, the turn of the earth, approaching the holidays, what that's like, coming out of COVID, it's certainly a transition. But you get an art journal every month. You get 5 to 6 paint tubes a month, depending on what the project is. And that's these little guys, these acrylic color guys. You get 3 canvas panels, 8 by 10, that we do 2 finished guided paintings. And then the third one, because you're going to be working your sketchbooks all the time, if not every Monday, we pick an image that we've been working on in our journals and we make a painting from that. Doesn't have to be exactly the same. Might be exactly the same. And one of the reasons I picked this size sketchbook is because this is roughly the same size as your canvas panel. So very easy to move an image from this size to your canvas panel. So I'm playing with the last of these branches. We're gonna give this guy some leaves too, so don't forget that. That's why this looks a little awkward in between here and there. We are not going to reconcile that because leaves are gonna go on top of it. And sometimes you have too much paint on your brush, and then you just take it off. Pulling these lines. For my baby blue colored tree that's glowing in this purple night sky. All right, so I'm gonna take a look at this whole thing. And I wanna make sure I get this guy. And I don't like that this looks separate than that, so that part gets a second coat. These roots, exposed roots, get a second coat. And I'm gonna go ahead and take a little bit more blue and kind of add a drop of that to my blue and white mixture. I don't want it quite as saturated as it came out of the tube, but I do want it certainly stronger than what I have. And I'm just gonna do some bark texture on my tree. And that shows up really nicely on this white background. On the dark background. It's one of my favorite ways to work. And you might be thinking about, okay, I have a blue tree on a purple background. What else is going to be going on? So it might be nighttime. We might throw in a moon. Throw in a night bird, like an owl. Maybe some other night animals could be roaming around. Maybe a moonflower that blooms at night could be really beautiful. This is our night fall tree. So I've got some of this blue, darker blue texture. And then I'm gonna go ahead and drop in a little bit just of what we've already mixed. But this is gonna show up lighter because it's gonna be more opaque the second time around with the second coat. And this is just the same one, light blue and white, kind of baby blue that we started with. I'm just gonna kind of highlight that in certain parts of our tree. Working around this way. Catches a little bit of light on here. Around this way. Reflected light. All right, that is the beginnings of our first tree. So I'm just gonna grab my pencil and get situated here. And I'm gonna go ahead and do some sketching on this. We don't need our transfer anymore, so we can peel that guy off. I'm gonna go ahead and put in, I'm gonna work with a full moon. That's kind of fun. We'll give it some craters maybe. And then moonflowers have this kind of horn-shaped, I don't know if you can see that. Kind of horn-shaped, kind of like a lily. And then they open up to these kind of star-shaped. And then they have these fun little twisties on the end. So I'm going to throw in some moonflowers. We also have some moonflower transfers that came with this project that we'll do something with again. And then we'll kind of throw in some leaves that kind of go there. And then I'm going to throw in one that's going to go off the page. That looks like this. It'll kind of come out from there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and let that dry. I've got some scratch paper here, just so that this doesn't necessarily stick to this. And this is somewhat dry at this point, mostly dry actually. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this here. Acrylic paint never stays wet too long. So now in this one, already transferred it. Sorry, it's already on there. I went dark on a lighter color. So I'd like to paint this one in with probably a go with like kind of an like a purpley red. So I'm gonna start with my red. This is Rose Madder, so it's kind of a rosy, kind of pinky red. Just like that. I'm gonna drop in a little bit of my purple. Mix these guys together. And since I've got this kind of blue-white already on the table, take a little of this in there and just see how it goes. It's probably just going to make it look a little bit more like itself because paint out of the tube comes very, very saturated. So yeah, that's exactly the color I want. Kind of a medium plum, not the lightest, not the darkest. And I think I want this one to be a little bit looser. So I'm going to, and I'm just going to use my little brush for this. And just kind of, I want this to be more of an impressionist. So I'm just going to kind of, not meticulously, just really intuitively mark up my outline. And some of my pencil lines are going to show, and I want that. I'm not discouraging it, I'm encouraging it. I'm just kind of using them as my guide. And we have kind of a fun pink and purple thing here. If you were a child in the late 80s, early 90s, this was a very popular color scheme and very much back. All of that era is. And so I'm just very loosely having some fun covering these lines with this kind of darker blue. And I don't think we've talked about gesture drawing or gesture painting yet, but I'd like to. And so the point of a gesture drawing is to very quickly, a lot of times when you're sketching and a lot of times when you're working from life, if you are out sketching somewhere and you want to do a gesture drawing, you want to, as quickly as possible, record visually what you see. And sometimes you set a timer and you say, okay, in 2 minutes, you have to draw the whole room. And you get a real interesting sense of urgency to your paintings and drawings. And the marks can be really really rapid and have some real life to them. And you don't overthink yourself. And so I'm kind of gesture painting. I've got a nice outline, but it took a little time to do, but really no more than the other one. And just working with what I've got. Same outline, same set of paints, same brush, different color scheme. Different technique. And it's important to explore different styles of painting. You might really like painting loose. And I don't do it very often. A lot of my oil paintings are very kind of meticulous, planned, layered, structured compositions. And sometimes it's really fun to be like, I'm going to get out of my element. I'm going to try something new. And do this really fun very textured. I'm going to do kind of beyond it. Some fun. A squiggle, twigs and sprigs. In here. All right. So in not a lot of time, I've done this really fun kind of gestural, loose, rapid tree. And then I think on this one, because we always talk about how trees shed their leaves, they also shed their branches. I'm gonna have some kind of like stray sticks and twigs. And I don't do a lot with landscape. I'm looking forward to doing it here, but I've done some. And a really fun thing to do with landscape is to do sort of an atypical sky, because the sky changes all kinds of colors. And this one's hanging out in the air. And we get kind of literal about it sometimes. The sky is blue in sunset or darker blue. And so I think for this one, I want to do the sun, but I want to do the sun in kind of purples. So I'm going to take this sort of light plum that we did, and I'm going to add some more rose madder. We're going to see what we get. It's kind of fun. Kind of a aubergine or maybe kind of a pinky maroon. I love it. And I'm going to add some more white. See what this does. We're getting really close to the color we started with, and I want this to be lighter. And so I'm going to add some more of this. And I think we'll get a really fun kind of lavender color. Oh, I love it. And I'm going to paint a really big sun. Now, this is a color, one could argue, could also be a moon color, but I like it for the sun. And then I'm going to do some yellow on top of it. So I kind of have it kind of coming out this way. And for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to get rid of all these kind of peaks and valleys, globs, for lack of a better word, just because we need to get back to this page. But you could leave them if you had more time. It's going to clear some of it off. So take off some of the density that we're working with. Make it a little more flat. This is considered working reductively. So we're taking off material. We're not necessarily putting it on to make something. And there's a lot of mediums that work this way. Certainly printmaking, painting. So, okay. Kind of like the way that's looking. We're not going to put any pressure on this. So I'm going to use the same piece of scrap paper and move it over here. And this is dried very nicely. So I think I'm going to get out, I think I want to make these white. So I'm just going to use our opaque white. I'll rinse off my brush. And I'm gonna go ahead and paint in our moon. And I don't want this to be really opaque. I want to see, even though this is covering white and it can do it, I want to see the dark go through. I think it's going to create this kind of silver texture that is really beautiful for the moon. And then I'm going to go do the same thing down here with our moonflowers. Just like this. I want these to look kind of like a ghost sort of veiled region on our paintings. Just like this. Some little curly cues on the ends. That's what the moonflower looks like. catch this guy at the bottom. It's always fun to take something off the page. Compositionally, creates a little bit of mystery. Where did it go? What's going on down there? And we'll come back in and kind of better define these later, but I want them to dry so I know what I'm working with. And we were gonna make this a really fun, oh, and actually I'm gonna make the leaves this light blue. They would be green. I'm gonna make them light blue today. That's gonna be our color for our leaves. Just like that. That. What's going on over here? Always fun to kind of predict where this stuff begins and ends. All right, so we're gonna catch up for just a moment. We've done 2 tree transfers. This one we're gonna put leaves on, so we just did the outside. We're gonna fill the rest of this in and some of the inside. On this one, we did the whole thing, but it was in this kind of very sort of sketchy, rapid, kind of high energy technique. So same template, 2 different styles, 2 different color schemes, going to be 2 different paintings. I think the whole thing is going to kind of marry together though with what we do on this page. All right, so I'm going to put this guy back in place. And in this instance, I want to use a red, but I also want to make some red orange. And so I'm going to get out my yellow. I'm going to mix these 2. And not all paint was created equally. You need a lot more yellow than red to get this color, which is the one I want. And I'm going to put a dab of white, even less into this one. Again, just to make these a little bit more opaque and to take a little bit of the saturation out of them because they become very, very saturated from the manufacturer. And what I've noticed about trees when they're changing leaves is they get darker as you go out. So I'm going to start with this color. And this is just going to be kind of a fun, build this up through here, around here, kind of dropping some leaves this way, kind of deciding how this guy's losing his leaves this season. This way. Get into this kind of red color that I've softened just a little bit. Coming around this way. And sometimes you make it to this point and you say, you know what? I didn't mix enough paint. And I'm not, yeah, we're gonna mix some more paint. That's okay, I know how I did it. I can get these colors back. And I'm going to kind of take also some of the paint that I've got on here and kind of move it around. So anywhere I see that I've got kind of a surplus where I don't need it, just going to kind of get this guy going. I'm going to let this start to dry. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to wash out my brush. And I'm going to work on my flowers and my moon. Okay. The moon is a very defined edge. We know where it begins and ends, especially on a full moon. Just like that. And then I'm going to give it some craters. I'm going to make these different sizes. Just like this. And then I'm going to go back in to my moonflowers and I'm going to outline the edges with just white, but it's going to be more opaque. I'm going to catch these fun little curly cues on the sides. Just like that. Back in here. Come around. This is my sort of stem to the flower. I'm sure there's a different word for that. Around this way. This way. Catch the outline. And then I just want to sort of emphasize the shape with these kind of ridges that I'm coming through like this with. And I'm actually going to kind of outline our leaves with the white too. I think it's gonna look really nice. And again, this is stylized. We're not worried about light and shadow. We're just having some fun with our images in our art journal. For me, this is something I don't usually do. I'm loving it. And it's how I'm going to spend my Mondays. And probably more than that, but definitely my Mondays. All right, I like the way all of that looks. We're gonna go back into our leaves now. I'm gonna get more red. And I'm gonna add some more white to our red. Red's tricky because when you add white, you get pink, but that's gonna be okay today. We're gonna make it nice and opaque. And we're gonna get some really, yeah, covering leaves. to go over the ones we started. When we started painting. And here you just want to mix up your stroke. Kind of want your leaves to go in every direction. Because they do. Just like that. All right, I like the way that looks. And I think I'm gonna have the leaves kind of blowing into our kind of lavender page I prepped here. So if you come in this way, and so when I like to do this, I like to say, okay, maybe I want this to be a spiral, and I kind of plan out how my spiral is going to go. So kind of have it paint sort of, I want it to come out here. So just like this. Still got some orange, so kind of getting peppered in here. And it won't just be in our spiral, so we'll drop a few more leaves going around. And then the last thing I want to do to this side is I want to put some yellow centers in our moonflowers. So I've got some yellow. Yellow is most gel-like, I think, of probably all the colors we use. So keep that in mind. So to get something opaque, you have to add a lot of white. Then you can go over it with some yellow again to make it stronger, but yeah. And so drop this into here, this into here, and this into here. To go over that one more time. Just like that. And then I'm just going to take some straight white or some straight yellow and kind of go over that with a little bit of that. So those are our yellow centers. Over here, I'm going to add some text. And so art journaling on a basic level, as well as can be obviously anything you want, and the sketching level is kind of where your sort of thoughts and ideas, and maybe some text, maybe, but definitely a visual representation of how you feel, not just a written word definition. So I've seen, and I haven't known how to use it yet because we've been looking at Sun and Moon stuff and a variety of other things, but Stay Wild Moonchild is kind of one of my favorites. And I think it's just about sort of being inspired by a time of night and place and aura, the night, that a lot of people miss out on. So I think I'm going to put Stay Wild on this side where we've got our moon, and actually Moonchild on this side where we have our sun. That's kind of my plan for this one. So when I do lettering, it's not my favorite thing to do. I don't love my handwriting, but I sketch it out first. Like, I know it needs to fit in here. So stay is 4 letters. I need to fit a T and an A here. So I'm going to start my A here, and probably my T begins and ends here. So stay. I'm going to put wild down here. Also, this goes without saying, but some letters are bigger than others, which is why spacing something that's 4 letters long is tricky, because W, I think, will make kind of smaller. I know I need a D on this side. The I takes up next to no space, so we're gonna get an L in here. So that's a good stay wild. And the other trick I do is I just kind of make sure I've started and ended my letters at roughly the same spot. So we're gonna go stay wild. And I'm gonna do that with my yellow that I mixed. And yellow and purple are complementary colors. Yellow and violet are complementary colors. So you'll get a really fun kind of pop, dropping some yellow on top of your lavender. And this is going to be in 2 different coats, and I already know that, so I'm not going to worry too much about covering. S's are the hardest letter. That's just the truth. If you can get them in 1 stroke, you can. If not, stop in the middle. So let's see how well I do. Got it. And then you say, okay, where do I need more? And it's right in this transition. So I'm going to come right around this way. Remember, I think I was in 5th grade. I just practiced making bubble letter S's. It's tricky thing to do. All right, so I'm just going to kind of flatten some of these out where I see I've got some excess. And one of my tricks, because I don't love doing lettering, is I do better sometimes with all caps than I do my own handwriting. So this was all caps. Yeah, that works. We'll take it. And I'm going to, again, just because we're going to be flipping over this page, go back in here and then just take out some of the excess. Again, this is working reductively. Kind of spread it around. It'll dry a little bit quicker and a little bit flatter. And that might not be what you want. If you get some really nice texture that you've built up with your paint, leave it. I'm just going to be flipping this page over. Just like this. Same thing here. I'm just going to kind of flatten these centers out just because I want them to dry a little faster. And this is our yellow, so I can put it back over here. Yes, I take paint from one part of my painting and I move it to another, just like this. And when your paint gets a little tacky, and again, for the sake of demonstration, I'm not being too careful, but where I move the stuff to is when you can kind of put in your scratch paper page and get it going. So I've decided this is going to be dry enough for my purposes right now. I'm going to drop this guy in here, flip it over, and I'm not pushing too hard on it. And now we have this one to paint. And I want everything I add to these two pages to be our yellow. So I'm going to get some more yellow here. A big dollop of white. And again, this is our wild page. I'm going to use some of this. I'm also going to add a little bit of this to this, so it's kind of another peachy tone. I'm actually going to start with this one. And I'm just going to kind of go to town with our wild tree. No wrong way to do it. I don't want these to look like leaves. I just want it to look very inferred, very of the moment. I'm going to come back in with our yellow, do the same. I'm going to let this dry because I want to do that again, but here we go. And then our sun, that again, I made purple, not too many purple suns. This is a really fun trick where if you really want your yellow to pop, you put it on purple. So there you have it. A very glowing sun. And so this is just what I came up with to play with my trees today. I've obviously done some other ones too. We're very interested in anything you might be doing with your trees. We wanted to show 2 different techniques today. So a little bit of a more planned one on the previous page, a little bit of more loose, abstract, energized one. I'm moving my whole arm when I do this. More kind of fallen strokes, just like this. And again, because we're working on four sheets at once that touch each other. I want to flatten all this out because I need this to dry. But I also want to get this highlight going in the middle. So I'm just going to take my white, add that to my yellow mixture that I started with. So this is just kind of a buttery white highlight. And I'm just going to kind of hit the middle with that. And come in with some kind of white. You want to get in and get out because you get these really beautiful textures. And I'm going to leave that alone. I like the way that looks. So last but not least, I want to write Moonchild in here. Again, representing the previous page where this is more the Stay Wild. But Moonchild is kind of came from the first one. And I'm trying to figure out where I want to put that. I think I want to do it. I want to do Moonchild. So I get out my pencil again. Pencil has paint on it, which means I'm using it for exactly what it's supposed to be used for. So this is 4 letters. So M, N, O. O is moon. Child is 5. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. H, I, L, D. The L to be more this way. I to be more this way. H to be this way. But I think I'm gonna go with this dark purple again. That I'm gonna have to mix. No, I guess I have some. We'll see how far this gets me. That I had from the first time. So I'm gonna start with child. No, I'm gonna start with moon. And this is this pull a line. Lettering is not my favorite, but the more you do it, there we go. Got that D in 2 strokes. That one. There's my H. All the curved letters are hard. They just are. There are people who do really, really beautiful hand lettering. We're going to bring them on. But this is how I've made it through so far. Some of these guys in. All right. So this is the sketch I had in me today for my sketchbook art journal. I used all of our paint. I think we used all 4 colors, definitely used all 4 colors that were provided. These 4. We started on this page. With our tree that was kind of very meticulously planned, that I put red leaves on, included the moon, added some moonflowers, and in a different kind of textured lavender wrote Stay Wild. On this page, added Moonchild, made a sun on that page, and had a very wild, abstract, kind of exciting, fun page to go with it. So this is what I had in me on a Monday. And I'm excited to see anything you came up with. If you want to use your tree, this is a good week to do it. If you've already used your tree, please let us know. And thank you for joining us today. We'll be back on Wednesday. We're gonna do a painting, and Hershey should be back. And if you'd like to subscribe, the January kit is available. That'll ship mid-December on timeforartsubscriptions.com. So thanks for joining us tonight. Everybody take care.